So now we have most of the UI done, and what's left is just a bit of styling before we do the back-end code. I figured this is a perfect time to try Avalonia UI Accelerate. It's a new bunch of useful tools, some are free, some are paid, for things like a visual debugger, installers called Parcel, and a load of added components like web views and other things, so it's a really good thing to look at. This is the perfect use case where using the dev tools is going to come in very handy if you're not sure how, for example, this text box is structured and we want to style it. So let's just take a look at that. So because the first thing I want to do is style this text box and say center this watermark. Previously, I've just gone to the GitHub, into Avalonia, into sources, and then you can go to the Fluent theme, which may or may not be the one that you've got applied. Into controls and then search for text box, and this is how I kind of do my styling. And then I'll look through this text box here and I'll look for, say, the watermark, and now I can see this is the content presenter template. So by literally examining this and understanding how this all comes together, I know then how to structure and style this. But that's a lot more long-winded than if we try to use now this Avalonia Accelerate. So one of the things in here is called DevTools. And you can see here we've got this nice little pop-up. It's like a F12 on the browser, like this, where you can inspect elements, do this, see the styles, make changes to style. So it's inspired by web browser DevTools in a sense. We're going to have a look at installing this into the project and using it to hopefully make it easier to understand the style and even test our code before we put it in. Because the other thing we'd do is we'd write some styles. So say in this text box here, I'm just going to be lazy and put it in here, not an actual style. Again, just this app is so small, I don't think it really needs its own thing. Oh, that's going to be inside of a text box. So I'm just going to do styles like this, and then select a text box. And then I always like to confirm I've actually got it by saying property is visible, value false, and you can see the text box disappears. So we know our style works, but then what we do is have a look at the XAML that we just saw, try to figure out what we wanted to do a kind of selector like this, and then to be honest I can't even remember, but what was the watermark? It's a text block. So we'd select on the text block, for example. We'd say text block, and then we'd do hashtag part watermark. And I can probably make that disappear on its own. And you can see that's not worked already. So straight away we have this that isn't working, even though we are inside of a control template. So we should just be inside the /template. It's a text block as far as we can see. So the part watermark is a text block, and the name is part watermark. So this should, in theory, work to make it invisible, and it's not working. So this is a great example. Like, I literally expected that to work, by the way. I didn't expect that not to work. But this is a great example where these dev tools are going to come in handy to figure this out. So instead of writing code here, looking and wondering what's happening, we can actually see exactly what's happening in real time. So if we just go to Avalonia, Accelerate, and we hover down and click DevTools, we can see what we're after. You can read up about it, see everything it does. But what we want to do is click Try Now here. Luckily, I now do work for Avalonia, so I have an official email. And I also have all the licenses I need. So if you get a free license, you can still sign into here, get your licenses. If you scroll down on this page, you're going to see a license key that you need if you want to use the pro features in a sense. But for now, we're going to do this, which is install the DevTools. And this is a global thing that you have to do on your PC just once. And then we're going to click full documentation here as well, and we'll follow this through. So the first step was to do this here. So we want to run this basically in command line. So I'll just open a command line window anywhere, paste that command in and install. And you can see I've actually got them installed already, so I've obviously used this before. If you didn't, you might need to do this as well. I overlooked this, where I think this should really be in red or something. But it tells you to uninstall the old tools. If you've ever used the old tools before, then you need to run this command first. Otherwise, you get some error about AVDT, basically. And then you can run the installer. Once you've done that once, you don't need to do that again on this machine, basically. Next up, this is per project now. So this step 2 is for every project you want to use the DevTools in. We need to run this command, but in the actual solution folder. So it adds a dependency. But one thing I think isn't super clear still is this just simply says all package Avalonia diagnostics can safely be removed. This is a kind of migration between the old DevTools and the new. So this will eventually clean up and become default. But as of today, this is a brand new project we made literally a day or two ago. And yet if we right click and edit the CS proj, you can see we still have this here. So this is what they're talking about needing to be removed, this avalonia.diagnostics. But because it isn't just a single line, I find this is kind of a bit more confusing for some people. They might not realize that this single gray line here is basically saying, in order to use this new one, you need to delete this entire section here in your CS proj first. Otherwise, you get both tools open in the old and the new. So we're going to delete that first, and that gets rid of that. And then now in here, so in if we just use the terminal inside of Rider, this will open up a command line in the folder of this solution, paste in that add package diagnostic support, which is this line here, and we press enter. This is going to install the new diagnostics into this specific project, and basically all that's done now. If we edit the CS proj, it's just added this line for us. So we could do that, but using the proper .NET add ensures it's done properly. And that should be it. If we now, I think we've done everything. Oh no, sorry, we just need to attach now in code. So we've got the dependency in order to be able to add this. So we can do this in the application here. After the load, if we're in debug mode, it's going to attach the tools. And that will mean that when we open the DevTools, we can actually attach to it. You can spin up the DevTools manually. You just go to a terminal here. If you noticed above, if you ever forget the command, it's this avdt, so Avalonia DevTools. So if we just literally type avdt in this project folder, don't know why it showed like that, that was strange, you can see it pops up here. So this is the DevTools. You don't need to open it manually, but if you wanted to check it's installed or running, you can do that. You should be able to do that from anywhere. So if you open a command line, avdt, like so, it runs the DevTools. So that's what that first global call was for. That's what this thing was doing. It was installing the avdt as a global tool. If this is the first time you open it as well, you'll be asked to log into Avalonia. So just sign into the account you use to sign up to Avalonia, and then you can log in. It's also telling you now exactly how to use it as well. So it's literally saying to do that, what we've just done, and modify. You can either use the build Avalonia app to do with DevTools, or you can do it this way. So if we delete that, and we see the other way of doing it, we should be able to do it in here. So I believe it's there, .with developer tools. So you can do this kind of style as well, a bit more of a modern style. And considering this is telling us to do it that way, but the guide is kind of initially telling us to do it this way, it depends which one you want to pick. They both work. I'm going to go with this style. And then it literally says everything about how it works, basically a quick guide of how it works. This is that pop-up I'm talking about you're going to get when you start up. You'll have to sign in for the first time. And once you're signed up, that's it. We should be ready to go. So I've closed down the DevTools. If we just press now F5 to run the project, this should run. And obviously nothing will appear different at the first. It will just show up as the application did. So nothing's different. But if we press F12, we can see now we have this fancy new DevTools. Now, I have noticed one slight bug in this that obviously I've passed to the team to look into. That if we've got debugging enabled and we wait like a minute, this kind of breaks into a socket exception. Don't know whether that's my machine we're investigating at the minute, but if you see that, then obviously there's a bug that we'll be fixing. But now you can see if I'm hovering the mouse around on here, you can see all the elements being selected. We can also do inspect element and do this, just like the browser. You can see you've got a nice ruler as well, showing the size of the window. So we're interested in, say, clicking on here, and it's going to instantly jump us to this scroll presenter, which is inside of here. And you can see you can build in and look at every part. So we can now not only see what this is, but we should be able to manipulate this on the fly. So we've got all the properties in here. Background is null, so we can just click set a background and see if things change. So you can see the floating watermark isn't doing anything because that's not shown, but we want the actual watermark in here. And there's that exception I'm talking about that just throws randomly. So I'm just going to ignore the exception for now. I don't know if that happens once or more than once, but you can see that's what I'm talking about, which might be a bug as a one-off. I'm going to click this, and you can see the over text block above says part watermark. So if I click that, it goes to this watermark. Let's try setting the background color, and there you go. This is live changing. So what we can do now is, or what I wanted to do is, let's remove that background. I want to try and center this vertically. And one of the first things that's really good is we now know this, and the thing we want to do is style it in our code. Well, if you right click, you can go selector and copy. Now we have that on the clipboard. If we come down to our code here, and this is, yes, this exception is going to continue to throw, unfortunately, at the minute. So hopefully it's just my machine and you guys don't get this exception all the time. We're going to paste in the selector here, and you can see it is just text block part watermark. So we have the selector correct there. So we know we've got the selector right, so let's just try and style this first. You can see we've got properties here. So we can do the is visible, because obviously the first thing we did was do is visible. So our selector should have actually worked here. So there's actually, not sure why this doesn't work. That should really work. There's no reason that shouldn't. Let's just ignore the fact that doesn't work for the minute and figure out what it is in terms of style we want to do. So I'm guessing we could just do a vertical alignment, and instead of stretch, let's try center. And you can see there you go, it's now center aligned, which is what we wanted. So we know we can do a vertical line center. So if we change this, vertical alignment center, and the thing is, if we just stop this a minute and build, we need to get this selector working. Otherwise, it's no good with, applying these styles, yet the selector's not working. So this should definitely be working. I wonder if it's something to do with the is visible. Let's just try background red. Yeah, so the selector's working, but is visible that I always use to test isn't. So let's just run the DevTools again and see if it shows us the templates, because I kind of want to see the template. If not, we'll just look at GitHub for the template. Let's just go straight to the watermark. And does it give us any hints of what's going on with its visible? So we've got local value, and I think it's trying to show us here. It's not very obvious, but it looks like, obviously, we've got binding on this as visible. So if we just tab through some of these properties, you can see on this side, none of them have that binding. And we get to as visible, and this shows up binding. So this is definitely giving us a hint that there's a binding going on. And you could read through this then, but I think this is a lot more complicated to look at than the GitHub if we know there's binding. So let's take a look at the template. It will be nice in here to have a way to see the entire template of the control as a kind of, an actual XAML, because this is obviously inspected and it knows the template, but it would be nice for us to see, say, the entire template of this control. So looking back into this template, now we know there's a binding there. We can scroll down and there you go, clear as day. There's a binding on is visible, so we can't override it with a style because the binding is going to take precedent. That's why our binding isn't working. It basically says if this content text presenter is null or empty, and the templated parent text for this actual element for watermark isn't, then it shows up. So basically that's a visibility check. But at least we know the selector's working now, and we don't want to make it invisible anyway. We don't want to override that. So with that, we can now style this how we wanted, which we knew we wanted the vertical alignment center. And you can see that's not actually changed it here, even though it should have again. So we haven't got the control we wanted, even though in the DevTools we can override the value directly. That obviously has more precedence than a simple style here. That's the other, I guess, downside. So we know that's what we want to do. So instead of doing that then, let's maybe do the text box vertical, now we need to remove the as visible, vertical content alignment instead. There we go, and that's going to center both the watermark and the text. It looks like there's some padding as well. So I think I'm still going to resort back to how I look at the styles in here. And if we take a look at what it should be like, you can see we want this. So the other thing we want to do is grab this color, and we want to set the background to that. And then the foreground we want to probably be white. Whether the watermark needs to be set different, we'll find out. That will be white foreground. And then let's just run this. I'm not sure whether that watermark is a different color or whether it's just taken on. I presume it'll take on a faded version of the foreground color, hopefully. Yeah, so I like that in a way. We want to get rid of the border and round the edges. And some of these as well, we're doing styles like this, but now we're just selecting on the text box, so we don't even need to do them here. We can just literally, how we've got them there. Oh yeah, actually, you can. So see how vertical alignment there? Oh yeah, so actually. So instead of doing them here, we can just literally place them here. And then we can do background. Because we were originally going to select on the watermark, these are just normal styles at the minute. So we can just move them out of here. Keep that blank for now. We'll have the background equaling this, the foreground equaling white. Corner radius, 10 maybe. 15. Yeah, I like 50. No, I like 10, I think. The border thickness, 0, we don't want a border. And let's see what that's like. So that's better. We've got the default outline doing this, where it goes black. But to be honest, I don't mind that. The only thing is, if this is a light theme, you can see the difference. So we probably do want to style the text box on, will it be pointer over or hover? Setter, property, and we'll do the same thing as visible value false, just to check if the selector's working. You can see hover doesn't, it'll be pointer over. So there you go, pointer over gets confused as hell and starts flickering. But again, if you want to see them styles, we can look in here and look at the pointer over style. So here's the style already in there, and we know it's set in the foreground, the inner template, so we could basically copy this style if we wanted to change the state and just paste it straight in. And then the only thing you'd need to change is this needs to be text box because we're not in a template. And there's now our style that we can override. And I've left child style in somewhere. Oh, and these two need to come out of there and go on their own like that. There we go. So now we have control of this. On pointer over foreground, let's just try red. And maybe run this to see if it's working. You can see that's not working. We'll try border brush red. Background orange. Let's see if any of these styles are picking up and working. And we might be running into a precedence issue here. Yeah, so none of that's working due to style precedence. So we can't style it directly in here. We're going to have to make a style the way we've always done it then. So we'll make a new folder, call it styles. I'm going to add a style in here. And this is why sometimes I just find it easier to customize controls by just taking this entire template. So let's just take the entire template. We'll rename this to controls. We'll add a new one. And this is basically how you make a theme as well. So we can use, doesn't really matter, let's use a resource dictionary, call it text box. Don't want to add it to Git, paste it in here. And now we should be able to build, and this is literally the exact template for the text box. And you've seen me do this in the batch process code. It basically allows us to have complete control of styling and do what we like with this watermark here. Before we can use it, we've got to add it into the applications here. So in here, we haven't got any resource dictionaries yet. And if we can't remember how to do it, we just open the batch process one. You can see in here, we have an application.resources with a resource dictionary. So we just copied that pasted it below styles. You can see we've already got resources, so it needs to go into here, cut out the resources part, and this is basically what we do. So we go into resources, add a resource dictionary, merge dictionaries, includes, and then we can include as many of these as we now want. In our case, we've got controls and text box, so we're going to include it like that. That will now mean it should use our style, which should override the built-in text box. Before we do anything, let's just run and make sure this still works and there is no change to the style because we've just copied the original theme style, so it should be the same. Unable to find setter to allow multiple instances. And that's because this needs to now go inside the resource dictionary. Like so, I believe. Right, so let's try that again. Right, so there we go. The style's the same. Now let's confirm we've actually managed to change this by doing, what can we do? Let's go to the, well, if we make actually what the style from here, if we make it default, so all of this, you can see the default there is now back to the lighter grey background. If we go into the style and instead we want the default style, and you can see the default style here is using values here for like the background. So in this case, the background wants to be, we paste our stuff here. The background, instead of being the template thing, wants to be this in our case. We could do this as a template, but like I say, such a small app, I'm not going to bother with that for now. Property vertical, align content center, value center. Background we've just done. Foreground we want right. White rather, not right. Foreground white. Border thickness 0, corner radius 10. And this should give us then the same style by default that we've just applied. And these should all update, which they don't appear to be. And that's quite obviously because I've just done that on the button. For some reason, I've not even noticed where we are on the template. So let's just copy them, undo that, go back to obviously what it was originally. And let's actually apply them to the right place. So I've just scrolled through and not even noticed where we are on the template, but we're in a kind of fly out and a button menu thing here. Let's keep going. And we should find, here we go, here's the template for the text box. This is what we wanted. So here's the foreground, background. This is where we want to change them. So foreground and background we want to override. Border thickness we've already overridden. Corner radius we've just overridden. And that was it. So now that should apply the style. And you can see now all the text boxes have got that style. And let's put the background of this designer here to match our app's background, which is in main window. This one. So now we get a nice visual and we can style it the same way we always have. I'm not going to be bothered about things like password reveal and styling everything in this case because, as I mentioned, this is a small app. It's currently got, the only use it's got is for me. So I'm not going to go crazy on styling everything. We just want to get this app working and functional exactly for what we want. So now we have that. We want to change the hover over, I think, wants to be different. And to be honest, I'm not sure what I want it to do on hover over. Maybe go slightly darker, like to this one. So probably to go from that to this, which is just a slightly darker color. So we should now just be able to go to pointer over, background here, get rid of that, paste that in. And there we go, nice and quick. So that's a nice hover. Foreground, we don't want to change. So same for that. Just hover the background. So there's a nice background hover. Clicking in, we don't want it to go white either. We want the, I think the background to stay the same. So that means focused. We want the foreground to stay the same. I don't think we want anything to change in terms of that. We don't want the background to change. We just probably want the border. Yeah, so that's better. Click in. You just get a border. The border brush, we probably want to be maybe white. Bit too harsh. Maybe, what other colour have we got? Well, we can style it on here. Instead of guessing there, you can do a stroke here. See, I like the white there, but maybe just a slight white. Yeah, it is actually a bit harsh, maybe just because it's thick. Maybe just a thinner border then. So border thickness maybe is the only problem. 0.1, 2, or has it got to be a whole number? So yeah, going thin doesn't give the best effect either. So I don't think we want white. Maybe slightly transparent white. There we go, just a faded, semi-transparent outline. So let's run that. I think I'm quite happy with that, to be honest, for the text box. Yeah, that's nicer. This hover gives a bit brighter. Well, a bit darker, actually. We maybe want the other way around. Yeah, I think we want to flip that around. So we want the focused, or was it hover? Hover background, this one, wants to change, and the default background in here wants to flip around. So we'll paste that one in, cut this one out, and go to here, paste that one in. And then the thing is focused, we don't want to change the background. So why is the background changing when we're focused? Yeah, again, this. So this click and drag and it goes dark as if pointer's not over. Not the end of the world, but it's a bit of a, when you're clicking, it's like flashing. I've never seen this syntax before either, never noticed that. That's quite a cool syntax to be able to use. Maybe it's the text presenter. Background red. That's going to crash on me. So let me just see if that's still got the flickery background or not. Yeah, so, well, yeah, when you're clicking the border, it has something to do with the border, nothing to do with that. So when you're clicking down on the border, it's almost as if this pointer over here is not necessarily what we want, or we just want this exact same value. Oh, I'm staring at it. It's literally, it's right here. We haven't updated that value. Actually, that's not border brush. That can go in there, but that's not the problem. It's the background. So this background, maybe we set it in here as well. There we go. It's just because we haven't got the background set and focus takes priority over pointer hover. That was a bit confusing then. There we go. So that text box is done. I like that. This, to be honest, for how bothered I am, I don't know whether I want to go through the whole thing of making that style, but did we not have that kind of checkbox in batch process already? Let's just run batch process a minute, because I'm sure we've already done a style for checkbox very similar. So, and that was a lot of work. So maybe we just nick it from batch process. And then if it is, we can just change the colors and then we will use that. Otherwise, I'll probably just keep it as a checkbox to enable and disable a bit easier. And no, we did in a way. We made it like this fancy gradient style, but we didn't actually do a slidey checkboxy visual, I don't think, anywhere. So, oh, we did there. So we did that. Yeah, so let's maybe nick that and just change the color. That won't be that big of a job. So we need to find out where that is and what it is. So that's in the print actions page. So in the view, be the actions print view. We have whitelist content. So it's a toggle button we've styled. So we just want to nick, I presume it's in here. yeah, this toggle button. We're going to copy all that, go back to ours, make a new one, resource dictionary, toggle button. Don't want that to git, paste in, go over here, and then we probably want to make sure we change the dynamic resources. So do we just do primary background? I think we'll just make a quick resource for primary background and foreground. So in the app, primary background and foreground, we'll do this. So you put that in with the below the resource dictionaries. So we go back to ours, go to the app. In the resource dictionaries here, we can put them at the top here. So we might as well just do primary background and foreground. I know I said we weren't going to bother because the app's small, but we might as well. So that means we can go to the top of the text box, get this background out, paste it into here. Change this now to a dynamic resource of primary background. Then we can do the same on that for the main window. So technically better, we just weren't going to bother. This probably just needs compiling. There we go, so that's the background. Foreground white, we'll do the same thing, even though it's obviously just white, we might as well still link it with the primary foreground. And now back into the toggle button then, we have, this is fine, we've got the padding, the values set. Nothing in there we can't bind to, let's just hide that. We just want to make sure there's now no resources in here from batch process that are needed in this template. So we have active gradient here, which is the border brush outline. In our case, we've got this kind of just faded outline. So we probably want a primary, probably have like a primary border. And this can be the, I think we did like a 3-3 F, like a faded one. We'll use that instead. Primary border. White dot, we say. We've got a primary foreground, which exists still. Primary foreground exists. Active gradient here we don't have. So for now, we'll just use that primary border. Obviously, I think this is going to want to be obviously totally different. So we'll come back to that when we see what happens. Same with this primary hover background. We will just change everything that's got like a value that we don't have, just a primary border, so we can see if this builds. Hover gradient again, we don't have, so change all three of them. Hover background, yeah, so all these styles we can come up with. That should now compile and I presume show. So there we go. That's, in fact, I quite like that. It's a very neutral grey. I just literally pasted the grey everywhere. Yeah, I kind of like that. That's almost exactly what I want, but we did have technically a much larger one. So the size was key. We kind of want to make it bigger. Let's include it in the app as well, because we've now got another control. So we've got a toggle button in there. We should now be able to see the, in fact, we'll change that from a checkbox now to a toggle box, which obviously is a bit more thingy. There we go. And now, can you just set the height? What will this do if we do like a height? Nothing. So you can see we want the ability to make this bigger. So that either means we make it physically larger, or we just use the UI with an enable button that is somewhere else maybe. Let's have a go at making it bigger first. So I presume we've got some height set here. So we've got a height for the dot. Can make the dot bigger. So the dot seems to control the overall size, and the corner radius over there. Let's bring him over to here. A bit easier to see then. Corner radius, what, 15? It would have to be 10, wouldn't it, to be perfectly round? There's a big dot. That's the white dot. Then the text box, text block. Will that not be that? That'll be border. So outer border here is the one where we want to round them off as well. Now we go fully rounded, bigger. I quite like that. Let's build that. There we go. That's nicer. I think that's pretty much fine. And now all we need is, I think when it's off, that's fine. When it's on, we maybe just change the white dot to green. So that will be background, primary, foreground. Now this would be it'd be primary, foreground, but then in the style for when it's actually checked, I presume. It is checked. Here we go. Toggle button, border. So we want to select the white dot in here, which I don't think we do anywhere. Yeah, so inside of here now we want to select the white dot, which is a border, and we could give it a name. So let's give it a name of part dot, call it unchecked style, check style. So now we've selected into the border, into the toggle button. We now want to select inside again. In fact, we've already pre-selected it in here. This is technically the border. We just didn't name it. So you'll find that is the the dot. So this should be background, maybe. Will that give us a dot background? There we go. So this can just be green for now, which looks more like that. I don't like the background being white. I think without the background, that's fine. The hover, again, I don't mind the hover. We'll probably change that to, I don't know if I even want to hover. It's kind of interactive, but yeah, I don't think I want the hover. So on hover, pointer, background, I don't think we want them styles. Yeah, I prefer it without the hover on that. Simple is better. So the only thing I'd say is maybe, to be honest, I'm happy with that. I think that's fine, actually. Keeping it simple is better. Maybe the outline is the only other thing I'd do, the border outline. So on hover, not on hover, on checked here, we'd probably want the border to be, I think this literally will be the border, will it? Part toggle button. Let's find out. Set a property border brush value red. Yeah, so that can now be green. There we go. Nice. Look at that for a nice, quick, simple style. The only thing is, with no background, your clicking's a strange thing because this has got, I wonder if that's always been a problem. And hovering over that is not causing an outline as well. So there's some other hover effect affecting border brush, which we don't want to change. So on hover again, let's get rid of that. Better. So now it's just, we can toggle this side, but when we have a margin, I think this has always been a problem with it. The margin on this, where we do the left margin, on here, this is then capturing the click event and not allowing us to toggle the button. So we need to maybe put, has this got a background? Right, so it needs a background here then. So let's do background transparent. Because we did we removed the background, it actually prevents clicking. So now it's working fine. Yeah, that's what we want. So I think that's the finished style. Obviously, most of that we've nicked from batch process to make it nice and quick, but there's a nice flat little button that's quite clearly enabled and disabled. Text box is styled. So the only thing left is making these buttons now, and then that's the entire UI styling done. Once we've done the button styles, it's the code behind, which is fairly simple because I've done, funnily enough, even though this is going to be a fairly quick development, I have spent about a week figuring out how to actually integrate into the multimeter to prove that we can even do this before I start making an app. So majority of this work on the application was actually figuring out the code. The code at the end ends up being literally 50 lines of code probably to do it. So it looks ridiculously simple. But the key was finding out on an archaic Rigel multimeter how you control it, what you need, what software you have to install. Ultimately, the lines of code are very small at the end, but it took over a week of solid work to figure out how to do it. But now we've figured out how to do it, the code will be simple. So that's it for this one, guys. I will style the buttons next, and then we'll do the back end and get this thing working and interacting with a real multimeter.